That's a wild morning. So, I have been thinking a lot about long term, right? Longer terms. And two things that I keep thinking about, which I basically stole. I looked at people who are now very far ahead and just listened to what they say their mistakes were. And a lot of these people that are really successful were like, I just didn't think about it on a long term horizon, right? And so they would, make things, they would make deals, they would make associations. And I'm going to give a few examples for these. If you think about your branding, aka your reputation, aka what people associate with you, which basically just means pairing. If you and something you do are connected, right? Or anything, right? Any symbol, any activity. I'm gonna give examples. Think about like Ninja from Fortnite. See what I'm hearing? Like you have the name because this guy has an actual name. You have the game he plays. You have his hair and this dance that he does. And then I think he was continuously kind of involved in some kind of weird scammy stuff. Or like, I mean, I'm assuming he's nice, but that's just what, as someone who's not in a bubble at all, knows about him. And so that works really well to like blow up, right? There's this big trend going on for some reason, something like Fortnite, and then you are super recognizable, and then you pair yourself with this hype thing, and then you make a lot of money during the time of the hype. And then afterwards, as it cools down, you just that guy from that thing. A few more examples. Think about Robert Pattinson with Twilight. It's the same thing. You have in general, if you're involved in like multiple shitty moves, then people will think, oh, this is the guy that does the shitty moves. Let's think about a few people that I've been thinking about that I think have really great reputations, right? I'm thinking like Markiplier, PewDiePie. I recently saw that Jaden Animations was retiring, and I think these people have absolutely incredible reputations. And I don't know how much purpose they put into this, but like Markiplier had this movie, I think this year or last year or something, and it like broke a bunch of records. And it's not, you can't just go and do the movie, right? Everybody understands that. And then you make this amount of money. No, it's like people go, oh, it's Markiplier, I'm gonna watch the movie. And so you have so many associations with him being a good person, right? With him, like the reason I am so focused on becoming the great person first and like fixing my issues because they bleed into my interactions with other humans. If you are like me, super insecure, and then you interact with another person or a situation, and this poison damages our interactions with humans, and now you are, not nice to people around you, or you can't literally be the human consistently, so then people can see that. It almost sounds like marketing, but in reality it all just comes down to reality, which is if you do something that's actually great, right? If you are actually great, then every time you radiate that from yourself. You know, PewDiePie hasn't built a reputation of being authentic and nice by like actively acting like this. He just is like that. And so we notice that as humans. And the reason it's valuable from like an actual business market perspective is because they are things we crave as humans, right? We want genuine, kind, funny, honest people. Like it's a rarity, right? That's why it has value in the first place. And so if you have someone like Jaden being very funny and vulnerable, by the way, all of these people are very vulnerable because we value authenticity so much. basically, this long game will be worth, in my opinion, millions of dollars, because I talked a little bit about how, you're supposed to, your need to serve the business, and the only reason for the business is not to make money. Or, well, in some ways it is, but it is to have a certain output, right? If you build cars, you have the business to build cars, so there are cars in the world. Um, and so I'm basically right now trying to use this decade to structure everything around how can I have the most likelihood of this thing happening in the future, which has to be more clearly defined by the years. But one of the things is it has to be made to last a really long time. And it means that the reputation and the things that I do and the character, aka the actual person that I am, has to just be good in reality. There is no faking around it. And I guess some of these people didn't really think about it or know it, and then they kind of regret it. But think about it like this: think about a YouTuber that has like a quirky, funny catchphrase or something, or his whole personality is kind of him being super goofy. That really works to get people's attention, and it makes him super recognizable. And then people go up to him and go like, sentence XYZ. And then they kind of end up burning out at some point because they feel like people don't know them for who they are, or I know a bunch of people like this. Like literally, there were like these goofy people on the internet, and it really works for the kids. And then you have always kids running up to you and doing the goofy thing. And it works maybe for a while, and you're happy for, money. But then as you change, if you don't make a huge effort in actually changing with it, you just don't want to, be yourself anymore. Another thing that I'm thinking about is like, think about Michael Reeves, and he does a bunch of Taser videos. So you always have pairing. You have Taser, Michael Reeves, Taser, or him being crazy, robots, Michael Reeves, right? And the way you can test it is you go like, hey, what if somebody had to like draw you? And then they would basically go you and all the associations they have. So if it's like me and I'm pretty tall, then people would always draw me super tall because they're like, oh, this is a recognizable thing. By the way, it has to be a recognizable thing, right? It's not just your things, right? Like if I wear a normal shirt, unless I wear this always, people forget about it. But if you're very tall, then people would always be like, oh, the very tall guy. But he also has a really good reputation in other things because he lets through in his videos the actual good person that he is, right? That he's kind of playing a character, but he's actually nice. What I'm trying to say is, even though it doesn't matter right now at all, I want to be very careful with what I want to represent. And I talked with my brother a lot about how like you want to be this kind of character if you want to be recognizable, but I think it is a short-sighted action. It will work. I believe that. Like if I like tattooed my face as a clown and then had pink hair, and then I just made videos, this would be so easy because people would always know who you are. You're like, oh, you're the clown guy. But then you would be the clown guy, like quite literally. Um, and you could maybe pair that where you say, what if you brought a huge value to a person and you just use this clown makeup basically to get people in the door? And I don't think that's completely wrong. So basically, you would go, you hook people with this recognizability, and then when people kind of get into your bubble, into your funnel, into your content, into who you really are, and then they would discover this like, I don't know, in some form valuable person that like, you know, educates or makes people stay better by like the reason a lot of these charismatic YouTubers are so valuable is you can point a camera at them and it's, it's kind of like they're your friend, and you're like constantly get value from them, right? They're funny, they're kind, you feel like you have conversations with them. Like Moist Critical, for example, basically has at least partly built his career on, first of all, being very recognizable and authentic, and then he just turns on his camera like 3 times a day sometimes, and the way he talks is so unusual and interesting and funny that people just want that, right? And streamers do the same thing, right? Because streamers have to, act a certain way. So if you're a really good streamer, it's usually a way to have being around you be valuable to people. People value all kinds of things. I talked about humor a lot, but I think it's just even all these story time people, right? Or people who show off their skills, right? Then you would like, oh, this is so interesting. This is so valuable to me. It's crazy that I haven't thought about this before, but it's like it completely shifts your actions based on the time horizon you look at it. Because if I say, hey, I want to be really famous on YouTube within the next year, then you just go full on clown, right? You could basically like, and it exists all the time. You could basically just do the most outrageous, crazy, goofy stuff. And based on the internet, it would work for a little bit. And then you would be known for that, but you didn't care about this in the long term anyways. And if you say, well, I want, this to be still a thing in 50 years, then you need to go for the big boys, which is aka the character traits and associations that are just super hard to get. I would argue that being a fully authentic person, aka someone who stands behind themselves with like everything they have, and they like fully accept the whole blow of opinions and everything that comes with it, that's really difficult. People who are genuinely good people, whatever that means, um, kind, honest, selfless, right? These things, the reason we call them positive traits, right? People being humble, is because they're difficult. Humble is one of those things that hits for me so hard because basically it means, let's say you don't fix the insecurity. You're insecure, and so you think, okay, I need to achieve X to get approval. And then you work super hard for years and years and years, and then you get the approval. And then a humble person would be able to say, I don't need this. And then you're like, oh, how is that possible? Because they fixed this first thing. Because if you are okay without your effort, then you can basically do all the effort for the sake of doing it, for the sake of service, for the sake of wanting to leave a mark, for the sake of helping somebody else. And then when you get approval, then you can say, thanks, thank you for your effort, but I couldn't do this with all these wonderful people, and I will continue to, do my best to serve you people. And then people are like, oh, he's so humble. How can he do this? It's this starting point. And yeah, I really want this decade to be a representation of that. Just like think about it in like the longest terms you can. And I think we're really scared to even go above our own lifetimes because we're like, well, I'm gonna die, I'm not gonna see it. But usually that's the people that get the most change. I think it's okay to just go like 50 years and just be like, what do I want when I'm an old guy and I'm 70? Well, I want to have lived a certain life. And even if you think about it from a decade and you still think in the terms of like impact and money, it will still matter. It will still matter. If you make a really good product, like a really good movie, last example, I swear, there was this guy and he made like an animated Warhammer movie or something. and you have to put years of effort. I don't know how long it took him, but it was absolutely incredible, right? And it was so incredible that even though it just got, I don't know, I have no idea, maybe 100,000 views, which is not bad, but it's not proportional to the effort, because you could just make some silly, I don't know, silly thing and then you get 100,000 views. But then the person that's actually working on a Warhammer movie sees it and is so impressed by the thing that he then, then the pairing exists, and then he goes, "Oh, you are that guy that made this amazing thing. You want to work with us." And this is, I think, the problem. Like, think about reaction YouTubers. They literally make this mistake. They go, "Oh, there is this great thing. I can just be in it, and I can just pair myself with all these things, and I can get all the views." And then they do, right? Some people actually build their career on reaction YouTubers, but they fail to make exactly this thing when they are, at the convention for all the great creators. People will not come up to them and be like, "Oh, you are this great guy who made this great movie," because they aren't. They're just a guy who reacted to it, and they might get the short-term benefits, but the long-term benefits of actually being the person, of actually having done the hard thing, of actually, you know having shown more than just this weird shell of a person that just has the ability to do some quippy jokes. um, and it's a bet, right? I don't have any proof. These things always only look good in hindsight, but I'm in it for the long term, baby.